Welcome everyone, I'm your host, Rabbi Drew Kaplan, the Director of Pastoral Care and Jewish Life here at Majestic Care of Cedar Village, and I'm very excited to have a special guest today. We have Sally Korkin. Hello, Sally.
Hello.
Hello. And Sally, you really have worked at Cedar Village for the majority of its entirety,
right,
from the outset, even before it opened.
Right.
So how many years total did you work here?
Okay, so I did not work at either Glen Manor or the Orthodox home. I was hired to work for Cedar Village, so I started working about 5 months before Cedar Village opened, and at the time Cedar Village was being built, so we had an office in an office park in Sharonville. Cedar Village opened on March 16th, 1997. I worked here at Cedar Village for 19 years. I retired in 2015.
Wow. So really the majority of its existence. And as we're going to hear and see from Sally on this video, there's lots of art, a lot of history wrapped up with all the art that still to this day remains strewn throughout the building. So hope you enjoy.
This is our Judaica case, and some of the items in here came from Glen Manor and the Orthodox home, and some of them were donated to Cedar Village by residents, by people in the community, in honor and in memory of people in the community. But I remember when we put this together, and there was a whole box of Judaica that came from Glen Manor and the Orthodox home, and we picked the best that we could put in there to put in this case. This is the Ner Tamid that was in the Orthodox home, in the synagogue at the Orthodox home. When Cedar Village opened, there were a lot of very generous donors in the community who made Cedar Village possible. This tile wall, which is on 3 different walls, was created by a man from Tennessee named Arnold Schwartzbart, and there's Hebrew on it, the plaques are on it, and it was a wall that was intended to grow, and the plaques are in various sizes, starting with the higher donations and then working down to ones that weren't quite as high, but nonetheless all of the donations to the original capital campaign are on this wall. When it opened, when Cedar Village opened, there were also plaques in the areas that were dedicated. So I think most of those are down, but on the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, and in the medical area, there were individual plaques. There's one in the Oakview Apartments that had what area was dedicated by the individuals. The room is referred to as a CRCC, the Cohen Culture and Recreational Center, dedicated by Wilbur Cohen and his family when we first opened. Behind me is the stage. This central part is for all kinds of activities. It's kind of the central place of Cedar Village. Big seders are held here, parties are held here, concerts are held here, speakers are come in here. To my right is the temple, to my left is the synagogue. When Cedar Village was conceived, one of the parts of the merger agreement was that there would be both a Reform temple and an Orthodox synagogue, because they were merging the 2 cultures, the Reform culture and the Orthodox culture, from the 2 predecessor homes. We had 2 rabbis on site. We had an Orthodox rabbi and a Reform rabbi from the beginning. We had simultaneous services. There's walls here, but then there's another set of walls. So during the high holidays, there could be simultaneous services. And in its heyday, there would maybe be 50 to 75 people who would come for High Holy Day services in the temple, and probably 20 in the synagogue. I don't think there's anywhere else that has this set up and has 2 places of worship under one roof in such close proximity. The back area, when Cedar Village was first conceived, this never happened, but there's sort of a back area here that was thought might be able to be used as daycare, as adult daycare. At Glen Manor, they did have an adult daycare. However, because this is in Warren County and Glen Manor was in Hamilton County, and all of their clients were really in that area of the city, it was really too hard to have those folks come out here to Cedar Village. So the adult daycare never happened on site here. When Cedar Village first opened and they merged Glen Manor and the Orthodox home, both Orthodox home and Glen Manor had various funds that people had donated over the years. One of the funds at the Orthodox home was called the Smith Sisters Fund, and there was enough money in the Smith Sisters Fund to purchase this beautiful grand piano, which is on the stage here, which has been on the stage since not quite when we opened, but shortly thereafter. And there's a plaque on the piano dedicated to the 8 Smith sisters who were part of the community and who were very active at the Orthodox home. Outside the CRCC, and there's a couple of pieces of art here that I want to point out. This picture right here was from the Orthodox home. It was a baseball team. They didn't really play baseball, but they were pictured as a baseball team, and these were all of the leaders of the Orthodox home. So somebody created this with drew the bodies of a baseball team, and then all of their photos were superimposed. We had a Cedar Village Golf Classic every year that was very successful, raised over $1 million over the course of time for Cedar Village for various activities. But this, we replicated the baseball picture to be a golf picture. Again, Beth Goldstein created this for us. Beth did the art for us. We superimposed the photos of really our leaders of the Cedar Village Golf Classic. This was donated and dedicated in 2008 when it was the 10th anniversary of the Cedar Village Golf Classic. These are all of the leaders and all of our Cedar Village golfers who helped us raise a lot of money for the tournament. We had the tournament, I think, for 15 years. Cedar Village was very fortunate that we were able to take 3 different missions to Israel with our residents. The first one was in 2007 to commemorate our 10th anniversary. The next one was in 2009. It was our B'nai Mitzvah mission during our 13th year, where residents and Jewish staff had bar and bat mitzvahs. And then in 2012, we had a mission with Otterbein, and it was an interfaith mission. On our first mission, which was in 2007, one of our very generous board members and donor, Wilbur Cohen, who from the Cohen Religious and Cultural Center, called me a few days before we were leaving, and he said, I want you to buy some art for Cedar Village. I want to donate some art to Cedar Village. We told our tour guide, we went into an art gallery in Sfat, and we were there during Sukkot and Simchat Torah, and we realized that we could get not just the art from Simchat Torah and Sukkot, but the whole collection of the 12 different holidays. So this was his gift to Cedar Village. We also had prints made of Sukkot and Simchat Torah for all of the participants on the trip. We had a dedication. There's a plaque here commemorating it, and there's a picture of the residents in front of it was called the Kedi Camus Gallery, and the picture is there. Down here to my left is a stained glass window that's framed and backlit, and these are pieces of the stained glass window from the old Feinberg Synagogue, which is now Edith Israel. Rabbi Feinberg's daughter was Mimi Peerless, who was married to Dr. Sidney Peerless, and when Sidney Peerless was selling his house, he called and he said, I've got this window in my living room if you'd like to come see it. So one of our maintenance men and I went to his house, and it was sitting in his living room, and so the family donated it to Cedar Village. On either side are pictures of Rabbi Feinberg, and then the picture of what the Edith Israel looked like when it was on Reading Road. So this is a real wonderful piece of our collection. We're in the garden dining room. This was built in 2004. Served the first dinner here in December of 2004. It was actually dedicated in the spring of 2005. The funds for this came from the generosity of the Jewish Foundation of Cincinnati, which has been really generous to Cedar Village and to the whole Jewish community over the years. Originally, when Cedar Village was built, the Oakview Apartments had their own dining room, and it was on the 3rd floor in the Oakview Apartments, where now the beauty salon is, and there's 2 apartments that were built in that space. The Fountain View Apartments had their own dining room. It was like really difficult to keep food hot and to serve the food, especially going over to the Oakview dining room. So some of the leaders decided that we needed to build a new dining room to accommodate both Oakview apartment residents and Fountain View apartment residents. Oakview was named Oakview because it overlooks the over 200-year-old Oakview, which is on the property. Fountain View was named Fountain View because it overlooks the fountain when you first drive into the property. So, and this just brought back this memory that every year on December 25th, we hosted Mitzvah Day, and it was a tradition from the Orthodox home, and the idea was that the volunteers would come and have a big volunteer-led day so that some of the staff that was able to could be at home. And at the Orthodox home, it was a little bit easier because the regulations were much different back in those days, and so community nurses could be nurses and doctors could be doctors, but here we still needed the medical staff and we needed a lot of our staff. But on Mitzvah Day, volunteers would come and help make meals, and they would serve meals in this room and up on the floors, and we'd have a big bingo in the CRCC and have concerts and have all kinds of stuff. We delivered gifts to all the residents, but this dining room opened in the middle of a blizzard, and so we opened the dining room, and I live in Wyoming, another staff member lived in Wyoming. We thought, how can we drive back to Wyoming in this blizzard, in 2004 blizzard in Cincinnati, and then be back so we could get ready for Mitzvah Day that was going to be a couple days later. So one of our staff members lived in Mason, and so we went and we stayed with her in Mason, and then came back the next day and got ready for Mitzvah Day, which went on. The show goes on. Cedar Village never closes, so in a blizzard, you can't say, okay, nobody can come in and come back tomorrow when the sun is shining, like you can close schools or close stores. The opening of this coincided with a big snowstorm. We all stayed in Mason so we could come back the next day. So these needlepoints on this wall in Fountain View Apartments were donated to Cedar Village by National Council of Jewish Women when they closed up their operation in Cincinnati. We received a grant from them, but they also wanted us to be able to display the needlepoints that were made by very talented, dedicated volunteers. These used to hang in their office, which was in a store called the Green Apple. It was on Montgomery Road, and they had their office in the building, and then they also had a beautiful, beautiful gift shop there. And they wanted us to be able to display these needlepoints. So there's 12 needlepoints, which are really reflective of all of their different projects that they had. And this was given to us in 2010. This was the Friends of Cedar Village suite. The Friends of Cedar Village is the Cedar Village Auxiliary. It was formed by the merger of the Glen Manor Auxiliary and the Orthodox Jewish Home Auxiliary. And when Cedar Village was built, this suite of rooms was created for them to have meetings in. This was a living room. There's a kitchen. They would do Bubby's Kitchen with cooking classes. They would do birthday parties during the week. They would do owning Shabbats on Saturdays, and so they had a kitchen to be able to store food in and prepare food in and have meetings in here. So this was the heart of the Friends of Cedar Village. They also still operate the gift shop, and over the course of time have contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to Cedar Village for the benefit of the residents. Len Sternberg, who was the first CEO of Cedar Village, when it was still the Orthodox Jewish home, some of the women there went to him and said that they wanted a place to meet that was their own. So he accommodated them, and when the plans for Cedar Village were drawn up, this space was designated for the Friends of Cedar Village to use because they were a very important part of then and when we were of the history, and then going forward at Cedar Village. And when I was director of development, they never turned me down. If there was anything that we wanted, they would of course say, yes, of course, that's great. What they didn't like was when people would come up to them in the parking lot and say, we need this, we need this, we need this, and the answer was, you need to go through Sally. So, but they always accommodated the needs because that's why they were here for the residents. This space was set up, there were couches in here. There were couches, and I think there was a computer here, so this was sort of like their office space. At one point in time, I guess even from when we opened, they had a huge board. Sometimes they'd have smaller meetings here, but their board meetings, which were always on the second Tuesday of the month, were in the boardroom because they couldn't have all fit around this table. It was active because they would kind of come back here and do planning and meet back here, hang out here. Here we are in the Cedar Village boardroom. When Cedar Village first opened, they used this room to display all of our history. When I worked here, I always brought tours here first because it really gives a good sense of who we are and who we were. So on this wall behind me, these are all the chairs of Cedar Village, beginning with Frank Harkavy, Jerry Teller, Jerry Lerner, Paul Hyman, Leisha Gringus, Andy Schott, Robin Harvey, Jay Price, Bob Rosen, Barb Reed, Patty Heldman, whose picture is not up yet. On this wall over here, the presidents of the Orthodox Home, which was started in 1906, and you can see there's fewer pictures here than when we share the wall from Glen Manor. These gentlemen had much longer terms of office. On the back wall are the presidents of Glen Manor, the Reform Home, and that was established in 1883. So this wall has a lot more photos on it. There's a few women who were president then. Leisha Gringus actually was the last president of Glen Manor and then was a president of Cedar Village as well. When Andy Schott was chair of Cedar Village, and he would run the meetings, and he would look down at this wall. His father had been the president of Glen Manor, and he would say, "I'm standing on my father's shoulders, my father is watching me." So that memory just came back to me. But this was sort of like, this is our history in this room. This is the entrance to the Aquatic Therapy Center, and the mezuzah on the wall going into the center was created by Beth Goldstein, who is a Judaic artist and works in ceramics. And when we were planning this area, we asked her if she would create a mezuzah. So there's one here, there's one out by the outside door, but this is a large mezuzah in the colors of water. Some of her work is also featured throughout the building. The day that we dedicated it, I wanted to have flowers floating in the pool. I had seen that somewhere else, and so the florist that we used had to have his assistant go into the pool and anchor them down so that they wouldn't float all over. I think they were on styrofoam. But when we had our tours, we had the flowers floating in the pool. This is the Jewish Foundation of Cincinnati Aquatic Therapy Center. This was added on and dedicated in the fall of 2014. When we did our rehab campaign and rebuilt the therapy area, which we will see soon. This was a nice addition. This is something which the staff and the leadership felt would be a good addition to Cedar Village. It's an aquatic therapy pool and then a large pool, and over here are two small pools where the floor comes up deck level so that wheelchairs can be lowered into the pool. There are showers here, there are changing areas, and this is used it was intended to be used for both inpatient and outpatient aquatic therapy, which is very comforting and very therapeutic. When we did our capital campaign for rehabilitation, we started the campaign in 2011. The pool was the last thing to be built, but therapy was upstairs on the second floor. The space had been outgrown, and so this space was designated to be the therapy space. So there's occupational therapy, there's physical therapy, there's a room where people can practice getting ready to go home, to make the bed, to put laundry in, to set the table. And all the way down at the end, there's a kitchen where residents can learn or can practice cooking before they go home. This space here, I think, was part of the clinic, the medical clinic, which is outside there. We opened up with a medical clinic with different specialties that came out here to Cedar Village so that residents wouldn't have to go back into the community. But the area down here connected to what was originally the Alzheimer's unit. Now it's the Fountain View Apartments, but that was where our Alzheimer's unit was, and so it was a wandering area, and residents could come in there, and again, there was a dining room, there was a living room. Residents could practice folding laundry, they could practice setting the table, they could practice life skills, and then there was a garden outside where they could wander into, and it was enclosed so it was safe for them. Alzheimer's unit moved up to this third floor on Cherry, probably in 2005 or 6. The reason was at that point in time, the Jewish Center had their preschool out here. They had a branch of their preschool here in this space because they wanted to have a space out in the northeast suburbs in Mason instead of just down in the city. So we ran a preschool here for the Jewish Center for 2 or 3 years. We didn't run it, but the JCC ran it out here, and it was wonderful for the residents because there was a lot of intergenerational programming, and the residents would wait at the front door when the kids came in, and some of them gave the little children rides on their wheelchair coming down to the area. This is the other part of the therapy gym, the other end from where we were before. This is the whole inpatient therapy gym. This is the cooking area here for people to practice cooking, and on the wall it says Sally's Place. That was dedicated by my family in my honor during the rehab campaign. So it was again made by Beth Goldstein, who's a Judaic artist, and she presented me with also a little dish that I kept on my desk, and now I have it at home that says, "Have you heard of Sally's Place? I'm Sally." We're outside of the garden dining room, across the hall from the garden dining room. Behind me is a sculpture that was dedicated by Wilbur Cohen in memory of his daughter Linda, who passed away. Wilbur was in the scrap metal business, and this was made from scrap metal from somebody who worked with him who created this. And it's an L for Linda and the Jewish star and the significance of the circle. I believe that inside there's a paper that talks about it that's on the windowsill. This was installed in 2004, I believe. This is the first of 2 brick gardens that was dedicated by the Friends of Cedar Village. This was one of their many projects that they did to raise money for the residents, and this was from when we first opened, and once a year they dedicated the bricks that were put in, and people purchased them in memory and honor for good occasions, for sad occasions, and at the end of it are all the women who were part of the Friends of Cedar Village at the time, including Frida Schwartz, Pearl Schwartz, and some of the other leaders of the Friends. They outgrew the space, so over by the Jerusalem Stone where we're going next, they created another whole garden of bricks and a sundial, and that was another gift that they gave to Cedar Village, was the sundial. Behind me is the Friends of Cedar Village sundial with their next brick garden. This was dedicated by the Friends in 2011. It's right next to the gazebo, which is on the property. There was an American Legion post in Cincinnati that had some funds left over, and I got a call one day and they wanted to donate something to Cedar Village, and they said, "How would you like a gazebo?" And I said, "Oh, we'd love a gazebo," because I really didn't know what they wanted to donate. So we've got a gazebo here, which is a nice place for residents to come out and sit and visit with their families, and it's right by the brick garden. Over here is the oak tree, for which the Oak View Apartments are named. At the time Cedar Village opened, this was a 200-year-old oak tree, so now it must be a 225-year-old oak tree. Behind me is a 6 to 8 ton piece of Jerusalem stone that was brought to the greater Cincinnati Jewish community by donors who wanted to do this to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the State of Israel. In 1998, Cedar Village was chosen as the location to bring it because at the time this was the only property in the greater Cincinnati Jewish community that was owned by the community. The JCC hadn't been built yet in Amberley. They didn't want to have it at one of the synagogues. Cedar Village was selected as the site. So I remember vividly the day that it arrived. It had come by boat, by truck, by flatbed, and this flatbed pulled up here in the parking lot, and all of the residents were out here, and there was a crane, and the crane lifted it off of the flatbed. They had put some sort of concrete on here to adhere it, and the crane came over top. I guess this tree must have been much smaller then, and put on this base. And every year for many years, this was the site of the Jewish community's Yom HaZikaron commemoration ceremony. After that ceremony was moved to the J, we still had it at Cedar Village that was led by our rabbis. We had a resident who had actually fought in one of the wars in Israel, and it was very meaningful for him to participate in it. I remember this, that he had been in the hospital, and his son wanted the ambulance to drive him past the rock, we called it the rock, on his way back to Cedar Village where he was going to be on hospice, because it was so meaningful to him. This is an important part of Cedar Village's collection of very, very meaningful artifacts, Judaica, and this is by far the largest piece of Judaica that we have. Imported from Israel. Obviously, it hasn't weathered as well here in these conditions in Ohio versus if it had remained in Jerusalem.
Thank you so much for watching this very special presentation. All Jewish Life and Programming here at Majestic Care of Cedar Village is made possible by financial support from Jewish Home of Cincinnati in partnership with Starpoint Home Care and Ohio Living Village Home, Health, and Hospice. Thank you so much for watching.